Intermission 2019 was held October 21st to the 23rd at Eagle Crest Resort in Redmond, Oregon. This session features Jeff Lucas, teaching pastor at Timberline Church in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Thank you so much, Lee, and thank you, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you so much for having me here. I so feel at home in Oregon. Just recently got back from England, where I had a very successful accent refurbishment procedure. So I'm hoping that you're going to understand most of what I'm going to say. I never get what I order when I go through a McDonald's drive-through. It just doesn't work. I ask for a hamburger and fries. I get 45 apple pies. It's just the way it is. I came to Oregon in 1985, emigrated from England. Anyone remember the 1980s? Amazing music, horrible fashions. It was like a fashion demon roamed the earth. It was just horrendous. And I went to live in Klamath Falls, Oregon. I was associate pastor at First Assembly there, and then traveled out from there for 3.5 years. And I look around this room and see faces of friends from those days. I believe in the church. How many believe still that the local church is the hope of the world? You can say amen to that. And that's been my passion throughout these years of ministry, to encourage the local church. So good to be back here. I remember when I first came here, I had no idea how big this country was. And we were due in Klamath Falls, and we flew in for the General Council in San Antonio, Texas. And I come from England, it's small. And I looked at the map, and we're in Texas. I looked at the map, I looked for Oregon, it's on the left there. And I said to my wife, Kay, she's smoking hot, I said, honey, we'll just drive over there this afternoon. I had no clue, and we had a Chrysler Newport with a hood that stretched into infinity, and you know, we got like 5 gallons to the mile, that kind of thing. And we drove for 12 hours. I've covered half an inch. I was so ticked, let me tell you. It was bad. But anyway, great to be here. I was bewildered when I went to Klamath Falls. I'd never been hunting before, and they took me hunting. It didn't go well. You could hear the deer laughing in the woods. It was just unbelievable. Anyway, there are some resources I've got, and I just want to talk about 2 of them. I never want to overstate the value of my books. That would be crass and inappropriate, rude and wrong. But it's God's will that you buy them. So this has just been released here in the States, and actually the David C. Cook, the publishers, have released it around the world. Notorious, it's called. It's a 9-week study on the rogues, scoundrels, and scallywags of Scripture. And it's an integrated study. The elder brother, Potiphar's wife, Saul the persecutor, Michal, daughter of King Saul, Jezebel, Judas Iscariot. We did a 9-week series at Timberline, so you can get the book, but it's also small group resources. But then there's a 10-minute video for each small group, and there are sermon outlines and PowerPoint slides. And I get authors' discounts, so do you, so they're out there. And I've only bought what I can carry, so if you want those, take those, pay for them, that would be nice. And we take checks, credit cards, cash, chickens, anything you have, really. So those are available for you. I'll talk about other stuff tomorrow. Pursue. What a great thing it is that we're called to do as women and men of God and as leaders, to pursue the purposes of the kingdom of God. And tonight, I want to talk to you both as leaders and as human beings, because you qualify in both camps. I want to talk about living and leading in Babylon. I've called this message, Where Do You Live? Leading in Babylon. And I'm going to use a phrase as I share this message over the course of this next 3 or 4 hours. I'm going to use a phrase, just kidding, just checking that you're there. I'm going to use a phrase, second choice living. Second choice living. What is second choice living? Well, it's when circumstances happen that you wouldn't choose. Second choice living. I want to read from Daniel chapter 1 and the first 6 verses. Here's what it says. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of his God. And then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we know them as. And then in 1 Peter chapter 2, Peter begins that letter, that epistle, by calling the Christians scattered exiles. He uses this language of exile. And then in 1 Peter 2:11, "Dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us." One of the reasons I'm delighted to be here, ladies and gentlemen, is because I'm delighted to be anywhere. I am one of those sad, pathetic individuals who gets lost everywhere he goes. This week I was at Colorado State University, thousands of cars in the parking lot, parked my car, forgot where I parked it, walked around for 30 minutes praying to God that I might find the car. My wife and I have a great relationship. We've been married for 41 years, but we occasionally experience navigational tension. Some of you know that's about, navigational tension. You're always lost. Some of you experience that. How many experience navigational tension? Just raise your hand. How many lie when the preacher asks you an awkward question? How many of you never raise your hand, whatever the question happens to be? My wife, I've got GPS on my phone. It's a British lady. She's going through a rough time. Please pray for her. She's mildly irritated with me most of the time. And the gentleman on my wife's phone is an Australian surfer dude with a six-pack. And he was previously in a boy band. She says he's smoking hot. And sometimes we have both our phones going at the same time, and yet still I get lost because I don't do well with directions and instructions. My wife trembles when we go to the furniture store and it says, self-assembly required. She knows it's going to go wrong. I'll spend 3 hours trying to put the thing together. There will be much muttering of phrases like, "Oh, praise the Lord." And I always I give up on the directions, and I always end up with something left over at the end, like a door, something like that. Recently, I went to a store. I won't say which store it was in case you know someone at Best Buy. And I went to this store, and I bought a TV. And the 9-year-old who was serving me, I said to him, "Do you think I can install this TV myself?" He looked at me. He said, "Sir, any idiot could put this thing together." I'm going to track that boy down and tell him that I'm not just any idiot. It was a horrible time. It's all about not reading the instructions and not understanding them. As we turn to the book of Daniel, I would like to suggest that it's one of the most misunderstood books in the Bible, perhaps only surpassed by the book of Revelation, which has been subject to all kinds of grievous treatments by us preachers over the years because we've turned it into a speculative eschatological jigsaw. The book of Daniel, it's a difficult, complex book, and if we don't follow the directions carefully, we misunderstand it. Say Daniel to people, and they think lion's den. Say Daniel, and they think fiery furnace. Say Daniel, and they think second coming of Jesus. And of course, all of that is in there. But I love what Eugene Peterson, the late great Eugene Peterson, said. He said, "I've never understood why Daniel, who for so long held a prominent position in the biblical pantheon of the wise, in our times became marginalized into a children's song, Dare to be a Daniel, and depersonalized into a puzzle piece and a scenario for the end times." You see, contained Contained in this book, there are some vital principles about life and about leadership that I wish I'd learned when I became a Christian back in 1832. So what can we learn? Well, I've got a few headings for you if you're writing something down. Let me encourage you to write something down, even if you're not really writing anything down. Pretend it will cheer me up. Just go, that will encourage me. You're preachers, many of you, you know. The first thing is this, setting the scene, exile. What was exile? Well, we know, don't we? 2,600 years ago, 587 BC. Jerusalem is attacked. The nation had been warned by the prophet Jeremiah, and I think we've got a newspaper, the trouble ahead from Jeremiah, judgment is coming. And they ignored that prophetic warning, and they found themselves under attack from the approaching Babylonian army. The city of Jerusalem was under siege for months, and then at last the city falls and the temple is plundered, and then some of the brightest and the best, including Daniel and his friends, are uprooted and taken off to Babylon. Can you imagine how it felt? The soldiers show up at your home and they say it's not your home anymore. Get ready, you're leaving. They're taken away from the promised land, which was more than a piece of real estate, more than a piece of geography. The promised land prophesied repeatedly to the people of God that God was with them and for them. The temple, the feasts and festivals that confirmed their faith, they are effectively imprisoned. And would you notice from our reading how many times it says that articles were placed in the temple of a foreign god? This was a spiritual attack as well as a military attack. And the people struggled to know, how do we respond? And some wanted to rant and rebel and rise up. And some wanted to retreat and become part of a ghetto. But then Jeremiah, who had prophesied this, he showed them a third way, which actually I think is very instructive for us. Jeremiah 29. He says, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I carried you into exile. What? I don't want to pray for them. I want you to nuke them. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. And what we see in Daniel, ladies and gentlemen, is a complex narrative of compromise on the one hand. They change their names, there's no objection, and yet refusing to compromise on the other. We see the complexity of what it looks like to live in that day, a complexity that I think we experience too. So that's the first thing, the exile. Secondly, let me say, we've all got green cards. We've all got green cards. We are resident aliens. I am not a citizen of the USA. I am planning to apply. I have, for the last 30 years or so, I've been a resident alien. I have a green card. It's not green, it's blue. It's always been blue, but that's what freedom's about, if you want to call it that color. I'm not going to argue. And the photograph on my green card is absolutely horrifying. It is really ugly, and I look like I'm about to be executed. I was going through a British Airways gate, and I showed my green card to the gate agent, and he physically jumped back. He said, "Whoa, that is really ugly." I said, "Thank you very much. God bless you." I showed my green card, a picture of it. I decided not to do it tonight because it could traumatize, but I showed my green card to the congregation at Timberline recently. I put it up on a slide. On the Monday, don't you love Monday after Sunday? And I got an email from a lady. She said, "I'm really offended and we are leaving Timberline." And I wrote back and I said, "What is it?" She said, "It was that resident alien card." And I wrote back and I said, "It's ugly, but don't leave the church over it, honey." You know, I didn't say honey because she's not a honey. And She says, we're leaving the church. I said, which service were you in? We have 4 every weekend. She said, I wasn't there. My husband was there. He came home and told me. He was offended. I'm offended. I said, how long have you been coming to Timberline? She said, I've never been. It was his first time. So I said, so you're leaving a church you haven't actually been to because of something I didn't say in a service you weren't in. This is our world, pastors. But we've all got green cards. If you have a pulse, you are an alien. You say, what? Theologically, you are an alien because we are not quite at home. We belong in the Garden of Eden in fellowship with God. And now because of sin, we have become alienated from that garden. One day, there'll be another garden. We read about it in the book of Revelation. But in the meantime, we're not there. And Jesus came and talked about mansions and talked about him being the way. And he invites us home. But if you've got a pulse, you're an alien. All people. And then all Christians in every age are resident aliens. That's why the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Philippi and said, our citizenship is in heaven. This was not teaching, this place is not my home, I'm just a passing through. Can I just say that? These people in Philippi, it was a Roman colony. And the idea of a Roman colony was to bring the culture of Rome to that city. And the Apostle Paul was saying, no, don't mess with that. Bring the culture of heaven to that city. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, the New Jerusalem is coming down to a renewed earth. We're not popping into outer space somewhere. But in a renewed heaven and earth, the great purposes of God will ultimately be fulfilled. But we're not in the Garden of Genesis. We're not yet in the Garden of Revelation. But let me say this. I believe that Christians in our culture today feel increasingly alienated. Just a few weeks ago, we remembered how the world changed September the 11th. Everything changed that day, September the 11th, 2001. We remember with gratitude and sadness the first responders and those who lost their lives that day. Stanley Hauerwas, a theologian, he says the world also changed one Sunday evening, September 1963, in Greenville, South Carolina. Let me explain. He said in 1963, in our town, the church was the only show in town. On Sundays, the town closed down. You couldn't even buy a gallon of gas. There was a traffic jam on Sunday mornings at 9:45 when all went to their respective Sunday schools. By overlooking much that was wrong in that world, it was a racially segregated world, remember, people saw a world that looked good and right. In taking a child to Sunday school, parents affirmed everything that was good, wholesome, reasonable, and American. Church, home, and state formed a national consortium that worked together to instill Christian values. People grew up Christians simply by being lucky enough to be born in places like Greenville, South Carolina, or Pleasant Grove, Texas. And the world changed one Sunday evening when, in defiance of the law, the Fox movie theater opened on a Sunday. And Hauerwas said, that was a crack in the edifice of the culture that was. And now everything ultimately has changed. Ladies and gentlemen, we're no longer the majority. We're not the primary voice, and often we are the suppressed voice. We're living in a culture that's lost the plot. It's postmodern. There is no core story. I would like to gently suggest to you that we are living in a culture where liberal fundamentalism reigns. What's liberal fundamentalism? Well, you can believe anything you like, sir, as long as you don't disagree with the liberal consensus. And then in the name of tolerance and inclusion, we won't tolerate that. And we have less power, we have a need to serve. In a way, we're back where the early church was in its difficult relationship with the Roman state. It's been said by Kenneth Leach, as Christians of the 21st century, we are exiles, strangers and pilgrims, aliens in a strange land. We will need to learn the strategies of survival and to sing the songs of Zion in the midst of Babylon. But I want to say this before I move on. We have got exactly what the world needs at this time. You see, there's all kinds of problems that are being solved. It is said that driverless cars, which will prevail very quickly, will save 1 million road deaths a year. It is said that probably in a decade, maybe 15 years, you won't go to the doctor, you'll go to an artificial intelligence doctor. A human being won't rack his or her brain to try and figure out what's wrong with you. Technology will have moved forward. But here's what technology can never do. It can never give our culture meaning and community. And that's what we've got, baby. Meaning and community. At a conference in 2017, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, said that community activism, engagement in community groups has gone down by 25%. He said Facebook's going to solve it. And it's been tainted by political rumors and sales of data to advertisers and marketers. And I like Facebook. I enjoy finding out what my friends have had for breakfast this morning. But let me tell you this. God's answer to humanity's needs is not Facebook, but it is a storied community. That's always been God's solution. Chris Wright says that Israel was created not at the expense of the rest of the world, but for the sake of the rest of the world. A people of God who are embodying the story of God in a culture that has really lost the plot. And I don't want to linger on this because I want to talk to us more personally, but just a few things. Can we pursue responsive change in our churches without the pendulum swing reaction that so often accompanies? I hear people say preaching's no good these days. There's no value in preaching. I completely disagree. You say, oh, you're just hanging on to what you do. Why is it that in London a comedian can pack out a 60,000 person venue 20 nights in a row, just a person talking at a microphone sharing stories? And then people say preaching is dead. Dead preaching is dead. Are we willing to ask questions? Because we're all pendulums. We think we're balanced, but we're all in reaction to something. Are we willing to ask questions? It's been said questions you cannot answer are usually far better for you than answers you cannot question. Can we communicate with biblical foundation and contemporary relevance? Can we facilitate authentic community rather than religious crowds? Because people are not just looking for services, they're looking for connection, engagement. We're living and we're leading in Babylon. So what about us personally? What about us personally? Well, here's the third thing. Second choice life. Second choice life. I didn't think it would turn out this way. We were in a pastor's meeting at Timberline a few months ago, and we asked this question. You might want to ask it in your church. What are our people saying to us? What do we hear from them about their lives? And one of our pastors said this. He said, what I most hear from people, from Christians in our church, they say this. They say, I didn't think it would turn out this way. You see, we all want first choice. Freedom's about choice, isn't it? America rightly celebrates freedom. People say to me, Jeff, do you celebrate the 4th of July in England? Why? Why would we? Hooray! We lost. And let me quickly say, I'm glad you got rid of us. I really am. You would have never put a man on the moon if you'd hung out with us. You know, Apollo space program, and we'd have said, oh, don't be silly. Just have another cup of tea. But what's freedom about? Freedom's about choices, and money drives choices, where we vacation, where we live, and health is about choices. And we kind of think that we're going to get our first choice. And the marketeers tell us, if you buy this, if you look like this, you're going to get your first choice. At graduation ceremonies, young students are told, if you can dream it, you can do it. What a load of tosh. It isn't true. Growing up, one writer has said, growing up in America is true in Britain too. Children consistently hear they can be anything they want to be. And this is normally accompanied by ideas of grandeur and fame and great success. And we sniff at the ordinary. And then when young people get second choice, we wonder why they are paralyzed by that, because we haven't equipped them for second choice. We have motivated them for first. I can't do anything I want. And there's the Christian myth, if I pray enough, I'm going to get first choice. And the grinning evangelist in the beautiful TV studio tells you that if you send him some cash, you're going to get some first choice right now in Jesus' name. Yeah, the Apostle Paul did some of his best broadcasting from a prison cell. And I can hear someone out there saying, but I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do anything. No, you can't. You can do anything for which Christ strengthens you. That's different. I cannot speak Japanese, play the bassoon, fly without tickets, or give birth to twins. My modeling career has been a failure. Viv Thomas said, in our ideal first choice world, we choose our job, spouse, city, entertainment, company, community, and religion with time and freedom. Most of us like to have our first choice. In the real world, things don't work out that smoothly. In ministry, things don't work out that smoothly. My friend Dick Foth, who I first met in Oregon, he said, life is what happens when you expected something else. And hold on a minute. These are royals, these people, Daniel and his friends. They're royals. You've been following, perhaps at a distance, obviously, our chaotic politics at the moment, Brexit. And it's all on a knife edge. 1 million people in the streets of London on Saturday. Parliament in chaos. The Queen has been on the phone to me all week. It is so irritating, and for the 4th time she called. And I said, look, Lizzie, I am at the Oregon network. I can't come back to sort this out. She said, oh, okay, Jeff, okay, I understand. She said, say hi, so. It's funny, actually, looking around. Some of you are believing all that. You were having a Downton Abbey moment right then, weren't you? You were like, whew. These are royals. When you're royal, you get what you want, but Daniel didn't. And listen, there's no happy ever after story where John Wayne rides off on his horse. I used that illustration one time in a church, and I said, and John Wayne rode off on Tonto. And someone said that Tonto was not the horse. She was Get this. Language different, culture different, location different. There's no happy ever after ending here. Spends his whole life there. And for some of us, let me put it like this. Our first choice world mingles with our second choice. It could have happened today. First choice, second choice. You get out of church and you're planning to go to a nice restaurant. First choice, hooray, hooray. As you get into the car, you break a nail. after having an expensive manicure. I hate it when that happens. Second choice. But then to get to the restaurant, you have to drive on I-5, where roadworks are planned for the next 400 years. Second choice. And you get to the restaurant and there's a parking space available. First choice. And then you reverse into the parking space and you smack into a car with a fish on the back. Second choice. First and second choice mingling. I need to slow down and say, but for some of us, it's not trivial. See, I'm looking around the room right now, and I know that there are some of you who are faithfully loving God in the midst of second choice circumstances that just won't go away. And you prayed. And you wake up in the middle of the night worried about that family member and that sickness, and you believe in divine healing, and so do I. But if we're going to have a theology of the supernatural, we've got to have a theology of suffering to go with it. And some of you, your church right now is a battleground. And you're hanging on. And some of you are wrestling with your faith. I get these doubt flashes. I didn't plan on saying this, but I think I'll just say it. I get these doubt flashes sometimes when the whole thing just seems implausible. I was praying recently. I suddenly was hit by the absurdity of prayer, humanly speaking, that 1 billion people can mumble their stuff to someone and he can hear and respond. It's humanly implausible. When I picked up the box of ashes that was my mother and then declared that there will be a resurrection and a reunion, my mind was screaming, saying, this is ridiculous, because it is, logically speaking. And so at times our minds recoil. But with our God, all things are possible. He is the God of the impossible. But that doesn't mean that you won't have a doubt flash. Some leaders and some Christians get paralyzed by that. One day you're going to see Jesus face to face. You won't doubt then. In the meantime, you don't see him face to face. So if you occasionally doubt, it doesn't make you a bad Christian. It just means you don't happen to be dead yet. But I want to pause. And I've got 3 questions I want to propose after this. And in a world, a Christian world, where leaders, we can be bossed around by the shoulds and musts and coulds and oughts. I said to God the other day, I'm fed up with always traveling in you and never arriving. There's always something more. Even if I read Leviticus this morning, I didn't read Deuteronomy. By the way, I didn't read Leviticus this morning. In a world of oughts and musts and coulds and shoulds, can I just stop for a moment and look around the room and say to people that I don't know about who are currently navigating second choice, and you're parked in Babylon personally, would you just hear this? Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for doing it when you didn't want a purpose-driven life. You didn't want purpose. You didn't want driven. You just wanted a life. You wanted to just go and play golf. I hate golf. I don't have a swing. It's a spasm. But you just wanted to relax. And I'm glad you're laughing. Because perhaps the laughter makes you a little more receptive to hear the well done of God.
Yes.
I pause for the possibility of you sensing his whisper rather than my voice. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. thank you. Three questions to conclude. We preachers often say that to our congregations, don't we? We say, and now, in conclusion. We do that to give them hope. The first one is this. Really quickly, what are we sowing? What are we sowing? Actions have consequences. You see, in Daniel's story, exile came because of national idolatry. Now, let's be absolutely clear. Sometimes things happen that have got nothing to do with anything that we've done. But sometimes they are consequential. Are we sowing bad seeds? Years ago, I had this demon-possessed computer. It was evil. It was an IBM Pentium 666 megahertz. It was experiencing data constipation, and so I decided, it's a technical term, I was pressing all these keys, I'm not really paying attention, and I suddenly realized I told the computer to format the hard drive. Some of you know what that means, don't you? For those non-technical, it means you take the top of your head off, you remove your brain, you discard your brain, you put the top of your head back on. It wipes out everything. I said, format the hard drive. The computer was freaked out. It said, are you sure? Y-N? And my finger momentarily hovered over the Y. And verily, I did push Y. Everything vaporized. I wish I could tell you that I responded to this with Christian maturity. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name. No, aliens on Jupiter heard the screaming. The foolishness of my decision led to consequences. Fellow leaders, are we sowing any seeds that could have devastating consequences? Secondly, how are we responding? How are we responding? Enroll in the Babylonian Academy. Because I look at Daniel and he flourished. And he received insight into God's cosmic plan, which included 3 kingdoms and then a 4th kingdom, which was the coming of Jesus. And he's in Babylon when he gets that revelation. You see, when suffering comes, it's a 3-way junction. You can get mad with God, you can draw closer to God, or you can go on cruise control and just fake it. I affirmed and thanked those of you that are navigating suffering. And I thank you for your faithfulness, and I pray that in that, the Babylonian Academy will produce beauty and revelation and grace. Last thing is this. Who are our people? Who are our people? Don't be alone in a strange city. As Jim comes back to the keyboard, that will encourage us all. I realized that Daniel had a crew in Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He goes back to what is a praying community, and he shares with them. They pray with him. He's got his people in Babylon. I live in Colorado. We have 14ers in Colorado. A 14er is a 14,000-foot mountain. I have been given books by members of the congregation about climbing a 14er. I have thought about it much. I have never done it. How many of you would like to climb a mountain? Raise your hand. You'd like to climb a mountain? That's good. How many of you have climbed the mountain? Raise your hand. Very good. How many of you couldn't give a rip and you'd rather eat pizza? Just... Right. Here's what I know I'd do. Thanks, Jim. Here's what I know I'd do if I was climbing a 14er. I'd know who's going to be with me. I'd know who my crew was. And here's what I've been thinking. I'm 63. I look older. I've had a rough life. 2 million miles on United, eating food lovingly prepared by a demonized chef. That's what you get. I'm 63. And I've been making plans for my 14er, because in 14 years from now, I will be see that lightning mind? I will be 77. And some of my friends will die. I might die. And there'll be disappointments. And there'll be sickness. And the 35 miles that I daily think about running, the body will wear out some more. So I've been thinking, who's my crew? Who's my crew? I'm not talking about superficial friendships and close encounters of an evangelical kind. Hello, brother. How you doing? Can't remember your name, so brother's really handy. Who are the people I'm going to cry with and laugh with? So what about you? Who's your crew? Daniel had his. Who's your crew? When I was in Bible school, they told me I couldn't have any friends in the church. That is heresy. I meet pastors, some of them are the loneliest people I've ever met. Isolated, scared, worried about being themselves, fearful of what Brené Brown calls the vulnerability hangover, when you actually just say what you feel. Who's your crew? Well, I took my 40 minutes. In a few minutes, we're going to eat together and laugh together. But before we do that, why don't we take a moment perhaps to just close our eyes? And can I just say this? Just right now, where you, sir, step away from being the leader in this moment. Step away from being the pastor right now. And thinking, I wonder how they're going to finish this. I wonder if they're going to sing a song. Don't do that. Let this be for you. For you. For you. Let's bow our heads. Lord, we thank you for your presence with us. We thank you that you were with Daniel and his pals in Babylon, in exile. Would you show us how to sing the song of the Lord in our day, when we feel more and more like resident aliens in our culture? Show us, as leaders, what it looks like to be the church. And for those of us, Lord, that our prayer is, our statement is, I didn't think it would turn out this way. Strengthen your people. Bring the kiss of your presence to them. Give them good rest tonight. Where we're sowing badly, let us know that actions have consequences. Help us to respond, learn, and grow.
Thank you for listening to this recording offered by the Oregon Ministry Network in Kaiser, Oregon. Our mission is to develop effective leaders and build healthy churches and ministries. Visit OregonAG.org to find additional resources and learn more about us.